I knew someone was coming for lunch. Uncle and Aunt had been whispering for days, fussing over the table, making everything look perfect. I had no idea who it was, just that it was someone important, someone I was apparently supposed to impress. So I braced myself, expecting some boring, polished stranger in a suit, smiling politely, shaking hands. And then the door opened. It was him. Chris. My Chris. My middle school nightmare made real. Tall, broad-shouldered, impossibly smug, with black hair and those piercing green eyes that made me feel like he could see straight into my soul. The same guy who had shoved me into lockers, mocked me endlessly, and haunted half my teenage nightmares. "Tony," he said casually, like we were old friends reunited at a cafe. That damn smirk of his made my stomach drop into my knees. "Long time no see." I froze. My fork clattered to the floor. You're... What? I couldn't even form words. My heart was hammering so hard it felt like it would punch right out of my chest. Uncle cleared his throat behind me. "Tony, meet your future husband." I blinked. I heard the words, but my brain refused to process them. My future husband? Chris? My bully? My worst nightmare in a perfectly tailored suit? Standing in my living room like he owned the place. I wanted to laugh, scream, run, and throw something all at once. But I couldn't move. I couldn't even breathe. The world had tilted. My stomach had dropped. And I realized with absolute horror, my life had just gone off the rails. Chris was here. And he was my fiancé. Flashback. I remember the day everything changed. The fire was small at first, just a crackle in the kitchen of our old house, but it grew faster than anyone could imagine. One second, Mom was calling Lena and me to come grab jackets. The next, everything was smoke, chaos, and sirens. I can still smell it. The acrid tang that clung to my hair for weeks. The way the world seemed to twist upside down as I pulled my sister out into the freezing night. Mom and Dad. They didn't make it. And for a long time, I couldn't make sense of the silence that followed. The kind neighbors, the social workers, the endless paperwork. It all blurred together. All I knew was that Lena was my responsibility now, and I had to keep her safe, even if it killed me. That's when my uncle and aunt stepped in. On paper, they were the answer to our prayers. They took us in, fed us, gave us beds, and let us stay in their house. People would call it grace, charity even, but life with them was never warm. I was 15 the first time I realized the truth. We were burdens. Every meal was a reminder. Every chore is a punishment. Every glance from my aunt felt like a verdict. "You don't belong here," she'd whisper when she thought I wasn't listening. My uncle would smirk from behind his newspaper, enjoying the little jabs, the silent reminders that we were their charity case. But Lena, my little sister, she never complained. She smiled anyway. Laughs in the hallways, tiny hands reaching for mine when I'd wake from nightmares. Protecting her became my only mission. And now, years later, the universe, or rather my uncle, had decided it was time to help me again. It started with a casual morning. Uncle lounging in his chair, newspaper folded neatly in front of him, and Aunt hovering by the tea kettle like a hawk. "Tony," Uncle said, voice calm but deliberate. "I think it's time you knew about your future." I frowned. "Future?" Aunt smiled, a slow, measured thing that made my skin crawl. "Your uncle has made arrangements with a very important business partner," she said, as if she were discussing a dinner party instead of my entire life. "You will be married to their son." I blinked. "Wait. What? Married? To whom?" "Oh, Tony," Uncle said, leaning back in his chair, hands clasped behind his head. "Don't make a fuss. It's for the best. Connections, family prestige." All very practical. I laughed bitterly, but it sounded hollow even to my own ears. "Practical? You're just deciding my life for me, aren't you?" Aunt's smile never faltered. Not deciding, dear. Arranging. And besides, she tilted her head, eyes cold as ice. We're providing for Lena's schooling. Her future depends on it, Tony. My stomach dropped. Wait, what are you saying? If you refuse this marriage, Uncle said, calm as ever, things might not go financially well with us. And it might, jeopardize your sister's education. Or worse, we could be forced to involve the state. Foster care, Tony. Permanently, I felt my knees buckle. Lena. My little sister, my only family left. They weren't bluffing. I opened my mouth to argue, to fight back, but words failed me. My chest ached, my hands shook. Protecting Lena had always been my job. Keeping her safe was everything. And now, this was the price. I swallowed hard, tasting the metallic tang of fear and defeat. Fine, I whispered, voice breaking. I'll do it. They nodded, satisfied. Arrangement sealed. And that's when I found out. My future husband was coming to lunch that very day. Flashback ends, back to present. The table was set like a magazine spread. Too perfect, too sterile. Fine china, polished silver, cloth napkins folded into ridiculous little swans. I sat stiffly across from Chris, pretending I didn't want to bolt out of the room and scream. He smiled at me, all shiny teeth and confidence. So, this is nice, he said, voice smooth. Your aunt really knows how to set a table. I mumbled a polite nod, stabbing at the salad like a man fighting for survival. My hands were sweating. My heart was hammering. This was him, my bully, my nightmare, my fiancé. We ate in silence for a moment, the kind of silence that stretches painfully long, where every tick of the clock sounds like a judgment. I tried to make conversation. So, how do you feel about this arrangement? My voice cracked on the last word. Chris tilted his head, green eyes sparkling. Feel, he said, as if tasting the word. I'm as happy as I could be. I blinked. As happy as you could be. Yeah, he said casually, cutting into his steak like it was the most normal thing in the world. My parents arranged it, and, well, that's the way life works, right? I laughed nervously, half in disbelief, half in horror. Right. Life. We both ate in silence again. Every so often his gaze flicked to mine, brief, calculating, like he was studying me. I felt my skin crawl. Did he know? But he said nothing. Not a word about the past, not a hint of recognition. He was playing the perfect role of the polite, agreeable fiancé. When lunch finally ended, he stood, adjusting his cufflinks. Well, it's been nice meeting you, he said with a polite nod. I'll see you around. And just like that, he was gone. I sat there, fork halfway to my mouth, staring at the empty chair across from me. My stomach churned. My mind raced. That smile, those eyes. I know him. I know that look. But he didn't know me. Or at least, he acted like he didn't. And I couldn't figure out if that was a relief or worse. 2 days later, I sat stiffly in the marble-floored office, fingers hovering over the pen as if it were a snake ready to bite. The paper in front of me was official, final, permanent. My uncle's gaze bore into me, cold and satisfied, while my aunt hovered, all smiles that didn't reach her eyes. Sign, my uncle said, voice flat. It's for the best. I swallowed, my stomach twisting. My hands shook. Lena's face floated in my mind. Her little round eyes, the way she'd clutch my sleeve when she was scared. This is for her, I reminded myself. I have no choice. Across the table, Chris smiled. Polite, charming, calm. Perfectly calm. But my eyes didn't miss the small tells. The way his hands fidgeted with the edge of the folder, the quick glance at the efficient, the slight tension in his jaw. He wasn't thrilled either. Maybe he was trapped too. My chest tightened. Memories I thought I'd buried bubbled up like poison. Lockers slamming shut on my backpack. Laughter echoing as I cowered. The day after my parents died, when Chris had laughed. He had laughed. And now, here he was, the same green eyes piercing at me from across the table, the same smug set to his jaw. I gritted my teeth. Stay cold, stay distant. Protect Lena. Nothing else matters. Tony? Aunt's voice cut through my storm. Are we ready to proceed? I blinked, pressed the pen to the paper, and signed. Ink burned like acid on my fingers. Chris nodded politely, extending his hand after the signature. I didn't take it. No handshakes, no closeness, no trust. The officiant cleared his throat. Congratulations. I forced a nod. Inside, a storm raged. Lena's safety had been bought with my surrender. And the man sitting across from me, the one I once hated, was now my husband. The first day at Chris's family estate was suffocating. Everything gleamed. Polished floors, spotless counters, furniture so perfect it felt unreal. Even the air smelled like it had been scrubbed clean of life itself. Chris moved through the space like he belonged there. He hung my coat with precision, made me tea just the way I liked it, and spoke in polite, measured tones. I hated it. Why is he so nice? I asked myself. Is this some kind of manipulation? Every gesture, every smile, every thoughtful glance made me suspicious. My mind replayed old memories like a scratched record, small, weak Tony, shoved into lockers, mocked endlessly. Chris's green eyes, that smirk. The sound of laughter when my world fell apart. I repeated it too, myself to stay guarded. But domestic life is relentless. He left coffee ready in the mornings. He remembered to take Lena, who, to my surprise, started staying with us more often than I expected, somehow all thanks to Chris, to school when I was late. He quietly fixed things around the house that I hadn't even realized were broken. I flinched when his hand brushed mine once while passing a mug. Doors slammed a little too hard. Words came out sharper than intended. Tony, you okay? Chris asked once, concern flickering in his eyes. I'm fine, I snapped before scowling at the floor. He said nothing more, just nodded and continued his tasks, calm, patient, like he'd been trained to weather storms. At night, when the house was quiet, I sat in my room, heart thudding, and thought about the man I'd once known, the bully who haunted my past, and the man in my house now, polite, careful, impossibly kind. I didn't trust it. I didn't trust him. But a small, inconvenient part of me, the part I refused to name, wondered if maybe this was different. About 2 months later, some nights, the house felt too quiet. Lena was asleep in her room, the lights dimmed, and I was left alone with my thoughts. I could hear Chris moving around somewhere, probably in the study or the kitchen. Quiet, careful, like he was trying not to disturb anything. I hated him. But I couldn't stop noticing him. The way he paused by the doorway, jaw tight, hands fidgeting with something invisible, green eyes staring off somewhere like he was lost in thought. He looked tense. Not like a man happy to be married, not like someone who'd chosen this willingly. And maybe that was the first confusing thought of all. Maybe he wasn't the same Chris I remembered. Maybe he actually regretted everything. I remembered him from middle school. The way he shoved me into lockers, laughed at me when I tripped, mocked me mercilessly after my parents died. I remembered the sting of humiliation, the echo of cruel laughter in empty hallways. And now he was here, sitting in the house, polite, measured, calm, almost kind. My chest ached at the contradiction. I wanted to hate him. I wanted to stay cold and distant. I had to. Lena's safety depended on my not letting him in, not trusting him. But even as I told myself that, a tiny, infuriating part of me couldn't help noticing how he moved, how he looked, How careful he was around Lena and me. Maybe he's trying. Maybe he's different now. And I hated myself for thinking it. A month later. The kitchen smelled faintly of cinnamon and coffee, the light from the late afternoon sun painting golden streaks across the polished floors. Lena was upstairs, probably lost in a book under her blanket, and I was sitting at the table, fingers drumming nervously on a stack of papers. Chris appeared in the doorway carrying 2 mugs of tea. He set one down in front of me without a word, his green eyes catching mine for a brief moment before he started tidying the counter. My stomach twisted. I wanted to glare, to say something sharp, anything to keep the distance I'd carefully maintained. "Thanks," I muttered, voice tight. He gave a small nod, brushing a loose lock of black hair from his forehead. "Long day?" I snorted, though it came out more like a groan. "You could say that." He leaned on the counter, arms crossed casually, watching me for a moment. There was no judgment, no smirk, no echo of the middle school bully I remembered. Just presence. And for some reason it made my chest tighten, my thoughts scatter. Over the following weeks, the moments kept coming. Little things I couldn't ignore. Coffee waiting for me in the morning, just the way I liked it. A plate of warm food when I came home, even if I hadn't said a word. Small gestures around the house, fixing a flickering bulb, leaving the papers I needed neatly stacked. Quietly stepping in when someone from Chris's business circle tried to belittle me, defending me politely but firmly. I hated noticing these things. I hated how they made my chest feel warmer when he was near. I hated the small, ridiculous hope that maybe he'd changed. One evening, we were in the kitchen together, cleaning up dinner. I accidentally brushed his hand as I reached for a plate. My body stiffened immediately. He paused, looked at me, and then slowly withdrew, eyes soft but unreadable. I swallowed hard, my face heating up. And in that tiny, fleeting moment, I realized something I wasn't ready to admit even to myself. I was noticing him. I was noticing everything about him. I hated that. I hated it, but I couldn't stop. Maybe, just maybe, he wasn't the same Chris from my nightmares. Maybe he was someone new. And maybe if I wasn't careful, I could start to care. And that thought, terrifying, infuriating, impossible, made my chest ache in ways I didn't know how to handle. Some nights Lena would fall asleep early, leaving the house quiet except for the occasional hum of the refrigerator or the distant sound of traffic outside. Chris and I would end up in the living room, sometimes without meaning to. One night we were both sitting on the couch, me buried in a book I wasn't really reading, and Chris scrolling through his phone. Silence stretched between us, heavy, like the air was holding its breath. I wanted to snap at him, push him away, remind myself of who he used to be. But something stopped me. "Tony." His voice was soft, hesitant. "Do you want to talk?" I swallowed, heart hammering. Talk about what? The fire that killed my parents? My useless uncle and aunt? The fact that I was trapped in this marriage with my bully? "I don't know if there's anything to say," I muttered, trying to sound casual. He didn't argue, just shifted closer. A careful, deliberate distance, not pushing, not invading, just there. And somehow that was enough to make me start spilling. Small things at first. Lena's school project, a nightmare I had, a memory from middle school I'd shoved into a corner of my mind. He listened. Not a judgmental glance, not a sarcastic comment, not a smirk. Just listened. And when he responded, it was thoughtful, gentle, never condescending. I caught myself laughing quietly at one of his jokes about Lena. A real laugh that wasn't forced. My chest tightened. What the hell am I doing? That night, something shifted. I didn't fully trust him yet, not by a long shot. But I realized that I could. maybe tentatively, let him see a little of my real self. And I hated how much relief that brought me. Over 3 months later. It was one of those nights where everything felt like it could break or bloom at any moment. Lena had gone to bed early, and the house was quiet except for the soft patter of rain against the windows. I was sitting in the kitchen, staring at a half-empty mug of tea, when Chris appeared, holding a small tray with 2 cups. "You need this," he said, setting one down in front of me. "It's chamomile." "Helps you sleep," I wanted to scoff, wanted to tell him to mind his own business. Instead, I took the cup, fingers brushing his. Heat shot through me, and I yanked my hand back immediately. "Thanks," I muttered, avoiding his eyes. He didn't push. He just leaned against the counter, relaxed but watching me. "You've been tense lately," he said softly. "You don't have to carry everything yourself, Tony." My throat tightened. Carry everything myself. It wasn't just about work or Lena. It was all the pain, the loss, the resentment I'd held onto for years. And somehow, sitting there, feeling his calm presence, I felt like maybe I didn't have to carry it alone. A quiet confession escaped me before I could stop it. I don't know how to do this. How to trust anyone. His eyes softened. "You don't have to know right now. Just let me try, okay?" And in that moment, my walls wavered. I didn't fully let him in, not yet, but I felt it. The smallest flicker of something dangerous and beautiful. Hope. That maybe he could be different. That maybe I could let myself care. And I hated that it made my chest ache in a way I didn't fully understand. A few months later, I was lying awake that night, staring at the ceiling. Lena's soft breathing in the next room. Chris asleep beside me. My chest felt heavy, like it was stuffed with lead. I'd been pushing this thought down for months, terrified to name it, terrified to hope. But I couldn't ignore it anymore. I want this. I want him. I want us. The memories of his care, his quiet patience, the way he defended me, the way he laughed with Lena. Everything came flooding back. And despite the past, despite the years of humiliation, despite the bitterness I'd nursed like a shield, I realized I could forgive him. I wanted to. I needed to. I turned to him, carefully, hesitating. His green eyes fluttered open, and the sight of him, so calm, so trusting, made my chest twist. "Chris." My voice was rough, hesitant. I want to try. I want to choose you. Not because I have to. Not because of anyone else. I want to try with my whole heart." His eyes widened, a mixture of surprise and relief washing over his features. He reached out slowly, as if afraid I might pull away, and touched my hand. "Tony, are you sure?" "I've never been more sure," I whispered, my throat tight. "I forgive you. I forgive the past. I want us to be real. I want you." For the first time since this nightmare began, our marriage felt real, not forced, not transactional. Real. And for a few beautiful, fleeting moments, I let myself believe in that possibility. A few days later, I couldn't sleep. Not since the day I told him I wanted to try. Not since the truth had been gnawing at me like a living thing in my chest. Every time I saw him, the warmth of his hands, the kindness in his eyes, it felt like a knife twisting. I hadn't told him everything. Not the blackmail, not the threats, not the choices I hadn't had. And I couldn't live with myself anymore. I found him in the living room, leaning against the armrest of the couch, staring out the window at the night sky. "Chris." My voice trembled, small, broken. He turned, eyes wary, searching. "Tony?" I swallowed, heart hammering. I have to tell you everything. I can't keep this from you anymore. It's killing me. He reached for my hand, hesitant. Whatever it is, I want to hear it. I took a deep breath, tears stinging. The marriage. It wasn't my choice. My uncle and aunt, they threatened Lena's schooling, said they'd put her into foster care if I didn't agree. I was trapped. I should have told you months ago, but I was scared. I was selfish. I didn't want to lose you, even though I felt like I was betraying you. Chris's hand froze on mine. I could see the storm building in his green eyes. Hurt, confusion, disbelief. Tony. His voice was soft but raw, trembling. You didn't choose this? Every moment, every kiss. It wasn't real? No, I cried, letting the tears fall freely. It was real. I love you. I've wanted to love you this whole time. I was trapped. I was scared. Lena, I couldn't risk her. Please, please don't hate me. His hand cupped my face, gentle, steady. Tony, you're trembling. Look at me. You did what you had to do to protect her. That doesn't make me hate you. It makes me love you more. And in that moment, the tension I'd been carrying for months, the guilt, the shame, the fear, began to lift. I buried my face in his chest, letting myself breathe for the first time in forever. The next morning, Lena clutched my hand as we walked into my uncle and aunt's house. Chris followed silently, his presence steady and protective. I had rehearsed what I'd say 100 times in my head, but now that I was here, my chest tightened with anger and fear. You think you can control us? I said, voice firm, trembling but resolute. You think you can decide everything about my life and Lena's? It stops now. My uncle's smug smile faltered, and my aunt's perfect composure cracked. Chris stepped beside me, hand on my shoulder, green eyes sharp. You didn't choose this marriage, right? His voice was calm but dangerous. Then every manipulation, every threat, it's on you. And it ends here. I laid out everything. Letters, emails, financial threats, the deal with the business partner, their lies about Lena. Their protests faltered under the weight of proof. Chris squeezed my shoulder. You weren't trapped alone. We face this together now. You and Lena, free from them. The power shift was immediate. My uncle and aunt had nothing left. For the first time, I felt in control, not manipulated, not cornered. I looked at Lena, her eyes wide but trusting, and knew we were safe. That night we sat together on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, rain tapping softly against the roof. Lena was asleep inside, and the world felt quiet, safe, ours. Chris held my hand, thumb brushing over mine, steady, reassuring. Tony, you don't have to carry the guilt anymore. You never lied to hurt me. You protected the people you love. That's brave. That's love. I leaned into him, letting myself finally rest. I love you, Chris. And I promise, no more secrets, no more manipulation. Ever his lips brushed mine in a slow, tender kiss. I love you too, Tony. This time, it's ours. Completely, honestly, ours. We stayed there, hands entwined, hearts sinking. The past was heavy, but it no longer suffocated us. Lena peeked out the window, smiling softly, and I realized we had finally reclaimed our family. Our choice, our love. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I believed in happiness. A few months later, the air smelled like roses and fresh linen, sunlight streaming through the tall windows of the small chapel. Lena stood proudly at the front, holding the rings, her grin wide and mischievous. I couldn't stop staring at her, remembering how much she'd endured, how much we'd all endured, and how far we'd come. Chris stood across from me, perfectly still, green eyes locked on mine. His suit was impeccable, but it didn't matter. I barely noticed the fabric or the cut because all I saw was him. Alive, real, and here because he chose to be. Because I chose him. I swallowed, heart hammering. "Chris," I whispered, barely audible over the soft murmur of our friends and family. He smiled, that soft, confident, completely him smile that made my chest ache. "I'm here, Tony, because I want to be. Always." The efficient cleared his throat, and I let go of my nerves, my fear, and every trace of the past. Lena held out the rings, winking at me. "Don't mess it up this time," she teased, and I laughed, a genuine, free laugh. I took Chris's hand, fingers lacing with his, thumb brushing over his knuckles. "Never," I promised. "This time, it's just us. All of us. No threats, no lies, no blackmail. And no regrets," Chris added softly, voice low, eyes glimmering with emotion. The ceremony began, slow and beautiful. We exchanged vows we had written ourselves, each word carrying the weight of our journey. The heartbreak, the fear, the love that had survived everything. "I choose you," I said, voice steady, eyes locked on his. "Not because anyone told me to. Not because I had to. I choose you because I love you. And I always will." Chris squeezed my hand, a tear sliding down his cheek. "I choose you too. And I'll never let anything come between us again. I love you, Tony. Fully. Completely. Forever." We slipped the rings onto each other's fingers, and when we kissed, it wasn't stolen or tentative. It was triumphant, sweet, real. Lena clapped loudly, cheering. "Finally!" she shouted, making everyone laugh. Chris and I pulled her into a hug, the three of us tangled together, hearts beating in sync. And as we stepped back, hand in hand, facing the future together, I realized something. This time, everything was ours to build. Every laugh, every tear, every quiet evening, every adventure ahead. It was real. We had survived the past, exposed the lies, and chosen each other freely. And in that moment, I knew, for the first time since the nightmare began, that happiness wasn't just possible. It was ours. The chapel rang with laughter, applause, and love. And for the first time, I felt entirely, completely free. The end. Would you stay in a relationship that started under pressure if it eventually became real love? Thanks for watching. Subscribe to become part of our Rainbow Force. And consider joining our membership for early access and exclusive content. Stay wholesome.